So Demi Marchese, yo, we're out here. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming by. All the way from San Diego.
I know, right?
Nice.
It's a beautiful view.
So nice right now.
Not the room we're in, but 10 feet from us is the beach, so.
But we're gonna get good audio, so it's nice.
Very good audio. And so to kind of start this off, I just want you to share a little bit of your background, like how you grew up. Obviously, you're from Danville, best bubble in the world.
Yes.
And so just like paint a picture for people listening, like how did you grow up and sort of what was Demi like as she was a little child running around?
Crazy. No.
Yeah.
That's pretty tame, actually. So yeah, I grew up in Northern California. Can't believe we grew up like down the street from each other.
I know, that's absurd.
It's absurd. And then we met, what, like 18 years later?
Yeah.
20 years later. Anyways. So yeah, Danville's a very small little bubble.
Yeah.
Filled with very similar people, but very similar mindsets. I grew up with amazing parents. They separated when I was around 5. I had a very unique upbringing, I'd say. I was actually going back and forth from my mom and my dad's house starting at age 5. I literally lived out of a suitcase, essentially. There'd be like a few days where I'd stay at one house, and there'd be a few days where I'd stay at another house.
Prime to the treasure hunt days now.
Yeah.
Started at 5.
Started at 5. But yeah, I grew up with an amazing family. I have a stepmom and a stepdad, 2 younger brothers. I grew up very athletic. Not athletic, I guess that's kind of a little braggadocious to say. I grew up very into sports. So I started gymnastics when I was 5. And then kind of juggled between whether I was going to do gymnastics, soccer, or dance, because when I was 6, gymnastics turned into something serious, which sounds crazy because that's 6 and the
like you were really good.
Yeah.
Not to be braggadocious.
No, yeah. So I had to decide which direction I was going to take then. I chose gymnastics, and when I was like 7 or 8, it started to become very serious, and I was doing competitive gymnastics, 35-40 hours of training a week at age 8.
Jesus.
Which is pretty insane, till about 12. So it was a short run, but very intense run. I learned so much during those 4 years. I went to school, and then I'd go to gymnastics right after, get home at like 9:30 or even 10, and have to do homework. So my social life was also a little unique too. Like I was kind of confined to like my 10 teammates at the gym.
Right.
And
couldn't
growing
really
up
have a
with
social life.
Yeah, so it was a totally different experience. But when I was 12, then I started having my social life back. I jumped into soccer, I did dance, had a little more balance come into play.
Yeah.
And yeah, went to middle school, high school, all in Danville.
Yeah.
And then went off to San Diego State. Well, went to 2 community colleges first, and then San Diego State. But within 4 years, I got through 2 community colleges and college, and got out of there.
Yeah,
and studied abroad. That's good.
That's good. For real. And so you say you learned a lot of like lessons in gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some of those lessons you've learned that have maybe like continued to be staples through your life?
I actually reflect back on a lot of the things that I've learned during that time, especially now, just because my mindset was put to such a test during those 4 years. I mean, I was having to do, I'd have to do intense training for hours. I mean, my mental state was just physically, mentally exhausted. There's times where I'd hate it and I'd love it. And just like now, it's such a roller coaster of events. There's times where I can't sleep at night because I'm so excited, or there's times I can't sleep at night because I'm so not excited. Yeah. So it's definitely pretty parallel in that sense, and just discipline. Definitely learned discipline at a pretty young age, and having to keep myself accountable for myself. There was a lot of goals. I had to set a lot of goals in gymnastics, and if you didn't make them, you're doing like insane things. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels for sure. Those are probably some of them.
Okay, and so when did fashion come in?
Pretty young, according to my mom.
Yeah.
I was laying out my outfits the night before school, like every night. I grew up kind of tomboyish because my dad didn't have any sons, but he loved football and was just very manly man. I was wearing like Notre Dame football sweatshirts and like sweats and stuff till probably I was like I don't
So
know,
you almost like
13
weren't
or 14.
into the fashion growing up.
Not that I was really aware of.
Right.
And then I'd say like 7th, 8th grade, I started finding myself more.
And that's when you stopped gymnastics as well.
Yeah. I was probably wearing the sweatpants I got from gymnastics just everywhere. So yeah, I started finding myself more in like that fashion sense, probably middle school, and then in high school, I really, really started to love it. I got on the fashion board for Nordstrom when I was 14, and then could work at Nordstrom when I was 14, which was weird.
Interesting.
Because now I'm realizing that doesn't seem legal.
Yeah. It's
But
like child labor laws.
yeah, I mean, I was getting paid, but technically you're supposed to be, I think, like 16 to work on the floor at Nordstrom, but I was 14, 15 at BP working. So it was essentially like my first internship in fashion, and I mean, I was so excited by it. And then through high school, I always found it as an expression for myself. I mean, I definitely get made fun of about things I was wearing, but I didn't really care. And then I'd see someone wearing something similar in like a few months, so I really didn't care.
Yeah, trendsetting.
Yeah, super big trendsetter. My mom took me out of school junior year. My dad hated this, but she took me out of school and went to Las Vegas for the convention at the convention center for the trade show, Magic.
Right, okay.
It's like one of the biggest fashion trade shows in the country, and she had her like wholesale license, so she took me with her, and I was definitely like the youngest person walking the show, but I was so excited, and it was just such a cool experience.
What would you say, because like I feel like for a lot of people, it's like this weird thing that like seems to always happen is like your parents do something and then the kid follows in their footsteps. And I know your mom's like in fashion.
Yeah.
She actually helped me make sweats years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
For the Life Yard.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, you know. And so like what would you say your mom played as far as like influencing you to, like I know today she's like you see her as a mentor, but even pre you doing what you're doing now, like how did she maybe guide you towards doing like a career, having a career?
Isn't it interesting how you start to realize your parents are priming you for certain things in your life that you didn't realize? My mom had Entrepreneur magazine sent to her house under my name at age like 15.
Swear.
Yeah. She
very
changed
much
it.
priming you.
I know, I'm realizing that now. I'm like,
That's genius.
oh my god, I'm gonna take note. So even when I went to college, she switched the address, got it right to my doorstep.
Wow.
I loved it. And I definitely, I was much closer with my mom than my dad, just in that sense. I mean, I am really close with both of them, but in the entrepreneurial sense, I kind of...
Is your dad an entrepreneur?
No, he works in corporate.
Okay.
Yeah. But my mom started her first business when she was probably 24, I want to say, and then started another one after that and is a business owner now. And I don't think believes in anything else. So it's just
So it's
kind of been ingrained in me for a while. But I wasn't sure I wasn't really sure that's what I wanted to do. I think there's different things inside that magazine alone excited me, but I didn't really understand that full idea of being an entrepreneur in it.
Okay. So like jump forward, go to San Diego State, right? 3 colleges, 4 years, also study abroad, just grinding. And I know when you graduated, your original plan was like to go work for Nasty Gal. You had this like big interview. You were freaking jacked out of your mind that you like got the interview, and then they just didn't call you.
Yeah.
And so it almost seems like just kind of what you were saying now is that like your plan leaving school wasn't let me go like be an entrepreneur. It was more so like let me work in the fashion industry and see sort of what happens. And so I'm sort of curious like what was going through your head is basically your like big plan just like collapsed.
I was pretty torn after college. I mean, I think everyone is.
That's
I remember.
a gnarly question to like face.
Yeah, your lease ends. You're like, that's what happened essentially.
You really have to go.
Yeah, May came around, I graduated, my lease ended. I literally had everything in my car. I was staying at my friend's house. My car got broken into, and my laptop got stolen, so that was a bummer. And then I just remember driving around like PV too and crying my eyes out because I just didn't even know which direction to go. I was literally like, do I drive home? Do I stay down here? Do I figure it out? What do I do? So fast forward.
And that was after you missed.
No, that was before. This is with like in 2 weeks after graduating.
Okay.
So I hadn't gone home yet.
Right.
So then I went home. Yeah. Then I went home and had different interviews. I just started grinding in terms of like networking with my family's friends of friends of friends, and who was involved in the industry, and ended up connecting with some pretty high up people at these different companies. And I didn't call them and ask them like, hey, can I have this or help me with this? It was more like, I'd love to hear about your story and like how you got to where you are and what you like about the industry and what you don't like about the industry. Tell me about your role, because I knew I wanted to go into fashion, but I didn't know what part of fashion. So fast forward a little bit, and I connected with the CFO of Nasty Gal, who then helps me get connected with human resources. And as a business owner now, I understand how busy everyone is, and stuff happens, you know, like a phone call can get, exactly. And it just happened to work out that like it was in my favor at the end of the day. But I was pretty stuck on working just there, and it was like, if I don't work there, I don't even see myself anywhere else type of thing. But I didn't really make too much of a mission to go and chase like another interview, just because I started to feel like maybe I have something I could just start working on.
Right. And that's when 12th Tribe was sort of like born.
Yeah, kind of. Like, yeah, started just playing around with it.
What was like the moment between like that moment where you hadn't heard back from them and starting 12th Tribe? Like, what was going through your head as you basically kind of came to this realization that you were like, man, maybe I'm not gonna like be at this place, and like, what am I gonna do?
Since I was home, so I moved back up north. I started working for my mom for a little bit. Yeah, to the bubble. I started working with my mom a little bit, just so like I had some type of income, a little bit of cushion, because I knew I wasn't gonna stay there forever. I knew I had to get out, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but let's just at least make some money. And I even thought about taking over her business, because she really wanted me to start working with her, and I saw a vision for myself there, and I had all these ideas, and that's when it started to dawn on me too, like, okay, I don't really just have one idea, I have a like 400, pretty visionary person. So why not just start playing around with something I love, which was fashion. And it wasn't like I sat down and wrote up this business plan and said like, okay, I'm gonna build out this company. It was more like, I have some extra time, so I'm gonna go do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna stay up all night and get obsessed with like making this website, and then I like taking photos. So things just kind of happen gradually. But yeah, I'll never forget like how excited I was just building the website and like learning how to put different things together, and I was up for all night long. Like, I'll never forget where I was either, you know, like right by the fire, just literally all night long.
Making the website. That's crazy.
It was the worst website, it's so ugly.
Hey, they say, my mentor taught me, he said a shitty plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow.
It's true.
Because tomorrow doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Right, so it's like, just
gotta throw something out
just
there.
go now, So for anyone out there that's, let's say, like in a similar situation to you, where they like have this idea of like, they know how their lives are gonna work, which I think eventually we all learned that you don't really know. But let's say there's someone out there that like, they know what they wanna do and they think they do, and all of a sudden that plan's fallen through, and they're in that similar space that you were, where like, the plan was no longer existing. What kind of advice would you have for that person on like how they can move through that?
Well, like I was telling you before, I feel like I connected with a lot of people that are going through that right now. I'd say I was pretty fortunate early on to have that happen, you know, right after college, where it's relevant with people right after college, but it happens to people in their mid-20s, 30s, 40s, all throughout their lives. I mean, I'm close with even entrepreneurs who've had businesses forever, who are like 40, 45, have an opportunity to sell it, or maybe their business is even going out and they're like, what do I do next? So I think everyone's faced with this conflict sometimes of figuring out which way to go. But at the end of the day, everything that you do comes from why, you know, and what makes you happy and what drives you and what gets you up in the morning. And it comes down to so much self-reflection. It's not something that's just gonna come overnight. And that's one thing I think people think that they can just figure out within seconds, and if not, they're calling and freaking out about it. But the reality is like, you do need to sit down with no one around you in a quiet space, like pull out a notebook, write down how you see your life in the next month, year, 5 years, from like your social life to your work life, where you're living, like all of those factors somehow play a role in what you're gonna decide you want to do. and also just ask yourself like what makes you happy. So like for me, starting a fashion company, what made me happy wasn't gonna be to like look cute every day. It was the branding aspect of it, to be able to inspire people, to connect with other people, to feel like they're a part of something,
Right.
which is essentially why I was attracted to other brands growing up. And that for me was my mission and what still drives me. So when I'm down, I still have that reason why. So I think just really reflecting with yourself, also listening to, if you have like some interest in some industry, let's say like you finally narrow it down to an industry, and then from there you go on to decide which part of the industry, which is essentially what I was trying to figure out after college. Do I want to go and do this in fashion, that, and
Right,
that?
totally.
Talk to other people, listen to podcasts, listen to YouTube about people's journeys, and just kind of hear about like the road that they took. Does it appeal to you? Does it not?
Right.
That type of
Learn
thing.
from that.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
How would you say that, because like you said you started interviewing all these people, like how would you recommend other people go out and do something similar?
Slide it
to
in their DM.
that?
No, I'm
Slide it in
kidding.
their DM. For real, honestly,
I'm
it
just
goes down to
kidding.
DM.
No,
Gotta do what you gotta do.
pick up the phone, actually. Ironically enough, complete opposite, which I guess our generation isn't as used to doing.
Right.
But LinkedIn's a really powerful tool also. I very rarely would approach someone just cold, without knowing someone else who knew them, talking
Right.
to them first, understanding like what type of person they are, if it's someone that I feel like I can even relate to, or if it's hard for me to, like, I don't want to feel like I'm using someone in any way.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
for
want to
sure.
go and ask for anything. But one thing I did find is that a lot of people who've been in industries for a little while, or even not that long, but have been through stuff,
Right.
feel completely open to sharing with other people their experience and helping guide them a little bit. I think we're so intimidated by people and think that,
They're like this title or this like persona
yeah,
that we
I mean,
can't.
I was 21 talking to the CFO who's 55 years old. I was so intimidated. I couldn't even spit out my sentences because
Yeah.
I'm thinking all this guy knows are these huge numbers, and I don't even know this industry. I don't want to be a CFO, but I need to understand
Right.
a part of his story because I know he hasn't been there forever. And that's one thing that everyone needs to remember is like the person, where the person is today, whether they're a CEO or CFO or whatever, they weren't there in the
For real.
beginning. And like, I think that's the most empowering part about it all, and inspiring. Like I connected with a really influential woman recently who's been a really big help in my life, who was a CEO of a very big company, but she started out as a merchandising manager, and within 5 years was promoted to CEO. So
Dang.
yeah,
Crushing.
and can you imagine what she's been through? And people like that want to share and help with other people and help guide them. Most of the time there's more good than bad people
Yeah.
out there, and we have
For
to
real.
remember that.
And it's like a lot of these people I feel like they had someone that helped them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's a
nobody-
pay it forward type of world. When people have made it, they didn't get there alone.
Yeah, like nobody gets to the top
Mm-mm.
just by like being by themselves. And if you do, it's probably super lonely and crappy and like
Exactly. The most successful CEOs and entrepreneurs are not doing it alone, and they're acknowledging the people who did help them. So,
yeah.
in short, that's my answer.
Yeah, very real. So go meet some people.
Yeah, good phone. LinkedIn, super helpful.
Yeah. So when you talk about self-awareness, are there any things like you currently do in your life to like help yourself just be aware of yourself?
Oh yeah, I do check-ins all the time. Sometimes I just slap myself in the face and like, you need to chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's like a check-in? Like.
In like which case?
So if you're like, all right, I'm going doing stuff with 12 Tribe, we're crushing it,
Mm-hmm.
but like you want to kind of like put yourself back down and see for a second, be like, all right, like, because I feel like sometimes people get successful and they're like so caught up in the success that
Yeah.
it's easy to just be like,
So
everything's
how
gonna
do I
always
stay
be
humble,
good.
basically?
That like, yeah, how do you like make sure that you're still on the right path? Because I know with like some brands, it's like
Yeah.
you can be going this direction. It's like there's this business opportunity that would help you grow here,
Mm-hmm.
but if that's not true to like who you are as like a company and a brand, then you don't want to bring that part into your business.
Yeah. I think through all of the ups and the downs over the last few years, I know it's not always up.
Yeah.
So I don't take for granted those times that are up. and I just kind of try to have a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I do a check though and remind myself to actually enjoy the moment, because I think I'm actually on the opposite end of maybe what you were saying. Like when things are going really, really good, I'm not the best at appreciating that moment and reflecting on it and patting all of us, well, I pat everyone else, but not so much myself on the back.
Yeah, you got it.
So I try to do check-ins like that more so.
Yeah.
And just embrace those moments, but then also tell myself, like, this is just the beginning, because for me, I'm very goal oriented, and when we hit a goal and it's an amazing goal, it's like, now we gotta go to the next one.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword sometimes.
Yeah, like taking time to be like, all right, we hit it, like celebrate, and like really.
That's what I'm trying to get better at.
Yeah.
Everyone take tequila shots. Okay, now get back to work.
Yeah, right. So obviously 12 Tribe, you guys are like thriving, right? You're doing super well. And I know throughout your journey, you've had a couple instances where you've sort of like faced depression and things like that. And I was curious, like, how did you get out of that? Because it's like one of the most crippling things ever, right? And like in today's world, it's so prevalent. It's like crazy how much it is.
People.
And so I'm just curious, like, how did you pull yourself out of that?
Well, first, I have to say that it's pretty astonishing how many people actually are dealing with it that you don't even realize. Like the people that I've connected with and shared a little bit about what's happened with myself, they end up feeling comfortable enough to tell me like, wow, I felt the same way, and you just would never assume.
Right, because their life looks all together.
Well, that, and a lot of them are actually males, and I think probably males cover it up a little bit more than females.
It's like the masculinity thing.
Exactly. But for me, it actually had been quite a while of trying to figure out how to deal with it. It started probably junior year of high school, I want to say. A little bit of it here and there. And I didn't really understand it. So it definitely took a lot of time to just kind of figure out what was even going on with my body and what was triggering it. Because if you have depression that's diagnosed, I guess, clinical depression, whatever. It's actually just imbalance in your body, so it's not like it's something you can actually really fix quickly.
It's not something you can.
No, it's not something that you can fix very quickly. Like you really have to work on it. So it's not really outside influences as much as what's like going on inside it's chemical imbalances. Is this the first time that you're hearing about depression? Am I shedding some light about
the like chemistry behind it for sure?
Yeah, so it has to do with chemical imbalances, like your serotonin's off.
Because I almost like, I don't know, depression's definitely a real thing, but I believe like the mind's so strong that like if you, but it's like, it's a whole other thing when you're in it, right? To like, just be like, let me strengthen my mind and get out. It doesn't really work that way.
It does, it definitely does, but it's just not an overnight thing. Right. And there's so many different elements of it, and in the beginning you don't know, especially if you haven't talked to a doctor or anything, and you're just dealing with like these ups and these downs, you think it has to do with you and how you're reacting to certain things, or it's other people, or it's different situations in your life that maybe you don't know how to deal with, which it is that, but it also is like chemical imbalance. Anyway, so over the last few years, I've started to understand it a little bit better. However, I would say like the second year into living in LA, it got extremely bad.
So this was like 5 or 6, 7 years later after it started?
Like 2 years later.
Oh, so it started junior year in college?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then 2 or 3 years later, I'd say, started getting really bad. It probably had to do a lot with the pressure I was putting on myself for my business, especially being an entrepreneur who owns business 100%. I got a partner, so it was just me, myself, and I, starting in my apartment, working with like the wall. And even in my first office, I was alone at some points, and like it's a lot on you mentally. But yeah, I've learned how to manage it better, and just realize sometimes there's lows, but it goes right back up after, and after rain comes flowers, so.
That's the truth. What advice would you have for people that are out there that are maybe, and obviously it's like a bit of a heavy question, but like people that are dealing with depression and things like that, like what are maybe like 1 or 2 things you think they could do to like get to the flowers after the rain?
Well, I think a lot of us have the superhero syndrome where we think we can just battle it, get over it, deal with it ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's really important to talk to someone else, especially because the way that it affects you can affect other people that you're not realizing. And so just feeling comfortable with opening up and sharing with someone else, just communicating, especially like if you're having a rough day or a hard day, and telling someone you're close with how it's affecting you. Because like I was in a relationship when I was dealing with it and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I also had new employees, and so when you're off like that and you just don't feel yourself, it's so important to communicate with them, like, hey, I'm having an off day, just understand like this and this, I just need you to understand that. Otherwise, like, you know, they can take it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But
if you got something going on in your head,
they don't know.
And you're trying to worry about that, but you're also trying to worry about how other people react to it, and it's like just more moving parts that make it harder.
And just like accept being able that you can talk to someone else is really important. And don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, because it's like people are like, you may just have a conversation with someone about it and they may finally be like, oh my god, me too.
Yeah.
So it's like you may be,
and it's happened so many times.
Yeah, like you may be a blessing to other people because you're willing to actually come out about it.
I think that's one thing our society is missing too, especially with the social media and portraying our lives in such a perfect way, is that people aren't being as raw as they should. So I think just finding ways to open up about it and share your story with people is helpful, because you'll start to realize how many people can connect through that.
Yeah.
But if you can deal with this and build a business, you can do anything.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think, just, I don't know, like, it's kind of cool that we're almost making, I feel like, a transition as a world to, like, be a little bit more vulnerable. You know, like, people need to be a little less perfect.
I agree. I mean, there's been so many, not to be so dark, but the number of suicides over the last year just, like, highlighted in the media, really from depression and people not dealing with it. I mean, Avicii.
Yeah.
Who else? Someone else. It's just so sad. Like, people just need to speak about it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Okay.
Even in like my own journey, like a year, maybe 2 years ago now, I was like diagnosed with testicular cancer, and basically ended up going through that whole process of like cancer being like a crazy word, and then like testicular cancer so being even like closer to my manhood, where it's like, this is something like, do I share it with the world, do I not? And it was super interesting because I try to live my life just like as transparently as possible, and it's like whatever I'm going through, if that can help someone else, then like it's a disservice to me and to anyone that this could impact to not at least share this and see if it can make a difference. And it was so interesting sharing that, and just being like open about it and how people would react, and just be like, one thing that was like interesting is like people are just so supportive. You know, like you may have this thing where you're like, man, I'm struggling with this and I'm scared to tell people, but it's like we as humans want to look out for each other. And so it's like the moment you're willing to be open about that, now other people are coming to you and saying like, hey, like, how can I help, you know, different things like that. And then it's just like allows you, like there's this quote, I forget who it's by, but it says like, our deepest fear is not that we are powerful, it's our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond measure. And at the end of the quote it says, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And it's almost that sense in the vulnerability where it's like when you allow yourself to be like, hey, I'm willing to be like nakedly open in front of the world, obviously in like a not a physical way, then it just like allows other people to do the same. So I think it's super cool that you like are open about that, especially with like the company you run, like you're successful. And I think for people to see that like it's not just the average Joe that's going through these things, but it's like people from all different walks of life.
Yeah, and I think something else that's important to remember is like, as an entrepreneur or even a female or a male, like we in a way portray this powerful character, or like strong character, and by sharing some of these vulnerabilities, it can allow us to feel like we're not as strong and people are going to see us as weak, or okay, well, she has this issue, so that means this, and just make all these assumptions. So I think that definitely was an anxiety that I had before sharing that with people, but at the end of the day, one, it doesn't really matter what other people think. And people are most likely thinking about themselves when they're thinking about you. So just remembering to not let that get to you, and just to like be transparent and pretty authentic about who you are.
Yeah.
It's important.
It's like the way to live for sure.
Yeah.
So with social media, I know obviously like 12 Tribe, you guys, like social media is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like your clothing brand, boutique, fashion, like it's very about showing the image.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know like a lot of people, it seems like depression has come up because of social media
Mm-hmm.
and things like Instagram, and like you were comparing basically your real life to this person's highlight reel. And so I'm curious, like, how do you avoid comparing your life to these people on Instagram, these like influencers and stuff where it's like,
I love my life. That's fine.
yeah.
I just, comparison is the thief of joy, and I think I grew up and was comparing myself a lot. Like I always wanted to be like her or have this or that. Meanwhile, I had an amazing childhood, but I think just as a young, insecure girl growing up, especially in Danville,
Yeah,
like
fair
let me
enough.
get my Ford Escape next to this BMW,
Yeah,
and
everywhere.
like my JanSport next to the Louis Vuitton. It's just, yeah. So I definitely don't compare myself anymore, and I say that with like full
It's awesome.
honesty. I have found, so I was telling you about that podcast earlier. I'll just tell you about it now, I
Yes,
guess. So
absolutely.
it was ironic because I've been doing this a lot, but like throughout our day in our life, like there's so many different, so many small wins that we don't really notice. Like we're always looking at the big picture wins,
Yeah.
like our income or our house or our car, like materialistic things, or even maybe like our social network. But there's so many small wins from like making your bed or getting to your car on time before you get a parking ticket. So this podcast talked about winning streak, and it's amazing. I love it. This guy has so much enthusiasm. He's like, I'm on a winning streak every time he does something small. But like when I started appreciating all of those small things in my life, like, okay, I got up early and I went to the gym before 7, and I broke a sweat. Like I sweated today. That was awesome. Winning streak. Literally winning streak. Or and then I made my bed, like winning streak. Or I got coffee and there wasn't a line, or there was only 3 people in line. Winning streak. Or I don't know, there's so many little things that I feel like we can find pleasure in. Like when I'm driving to work, I'll put on my Spotify and I just add a new song. I'm like, yes, new song in the album. Or like, my car's clean, this feels good,
right.
There's no traffic, or I got 3 green lights. I don't know, I'm trying to find all these really small little things that are essentially like your winning streak, but they just kind of like prime your subconscious to have an even bigger win.
Yeah.
And like attract that into your life. With that said though, I'm just appreciating a lot more things in my life, like the small ones that just distract me from even comparing myself to these other people.
Do you do anything to like practice appreciating? Or is it the winning
Other
streak?
people?
No, like the things in your
I was
life.
like, I appreciate other people.
yeah. But for yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, in like what sense?
So you're saying like the winning streak, like you do something, you're like, yes, winning streak, and you're practicing.
You just tell yourself.
Huh.
You just give yourself like a verbal pat on the back, or like you, because like the more positive reinforcement you're giving these like little encounters through your day, or like the more things you're noticing like this, I just feel like, especially with the law of attraction, like you're gonna attract more good into your life because you're gonna start realizing
you're like vibrating literally at a higher frequency.
Exactly. And as you start appreciating these small things, and then you appreciate those medium things, then you're like, whoa, this big thing, this is amazing. So winning streak.
Winning streak.
I'm on a winning streak.
For real, I like that. I'm about to be on a winning streak. I'm on a winning streak today.
Don't compare yourself to other people. Like, if you do, just take out your phone and start writing notes about everything that's going on in your life. That's so amazing. Because even when you start comparing yourself to other people, what you're comparing is things that they're showing the world, which is amazing stuff probably, but like how much is going on behind the scenes. And that I just take first hand and look at my own profile and see like, oh, there's a lot of amazing stuff on here, but they don't know I have depression. Like, they don't know that I just cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
They don't know that like I just had the hardest month of my life and I'm like dropping weight because I'm stressed. Like, they have no idea. So I try to like chime in and throw some vulnerable moments in there, but the reality is everyone's going through the same shit. Something, whether it's 500 things or one thing, like everyone's going through it.
Yeah, that's real. Would you have any like tips of advice for, I don't know, I feel like people almost get like addicted to like Instagram and social media and things like that. Would you have any tips for them on like, get the fuck off for a second? Like,
I mean, I used to be obsessed too, and then my mom almost killed me. Because my whole business is on my phone. I mean, like, whether it's social media, my emails, my texts are emails, essentially. I have vendors on there, WhatsApp, like, international vendors, everything, photos, whatever. But I've realized that the world will survive without me touching base all the time. There's also a setting on your phone where you can put it on like auto response.
Oh.
I don't think anyone knows about this. I know.
Like whenever.
Yeah, so you can put it on now, and when someone texts you, it says something like, "Hey, taking a break from like my phone right now.
Yeah.
I'll touch base in 5 hours," or whatever. So there's that, or I've even left my phone at home sometimes, and it's like the most refreshing feeling. You will feel one, lost for a second, but then two, like, I'm free. There's that, and then I put my phone on airplane mode now at like 9:30, unless I'm like in conversation with someone, but I'll put it on airplane mode. Before, I used to get up, check my phone all night. I mean, I still am obsessed with my business, but like it's through social media, and as I'm starting, it's like you never know what can happen on Instagram with a brand. So I'd be like refreshing all the time.
24/7.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some fun tips, I guess you could say.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting. Tim Ferriss, if you've ever read the book, I think it's in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. He does something. It's called the like social media cleanse or something like that, and he basically challenges you for a week to not go on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, like anything. And it was super interesting.
Done it?
Yeah, I've done it, and it's super interesting because like.
Did you die the first day?
It's
like withdrawals?
One of the funniest things is you realize how sometimes when you're going to the bathroom, you check your phone, and now as soon as you go in the bathroom, you'd be like,
10 minutes later.
You'd be like, what do I actually do? And you know, it'd be like you start becoming productive and doing different things with your life.
You get so much done
yeah.
when you're not on your phone all the time.
Yeah, but yeah, then after like the first 2 days of like going through withdrawals, the rest of the week it's actually like so cleansing because you're just like, man, I can like focus on my life and like just be more present in the moment, because like sometimes you're in a conversation with people and you're not in the conversation, you know what I mean? Like your head's thinking about like, well, I gotta post this time, or I gotta see what's going on in that person's life or whatever. So yeah, I think doing a social media cleanse is like for sure good, or leaving your phone at home. The auto alerts, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think now phones have alerts too when you're on your screen too much, so it'll alert you, but no one listens to it. They're like, okay, next, and then they get back on their phone.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think it's just checking with yourself too when you open up that social media app, which has just an addictive tendency that they are figuring out people have.
Yeah.
But asking yourself, what is this doing for me right now? Probably not too much. Scrolling through there.
Probably not anything good.
So check in with yourself and try to see what you could do instead. Get a book or whatever.
Cool. So to go back to more of like some of these people that are maybe lost, figuring out what they do. I know you said you have 2 younger brothers. So I'm curious, you've done well, and so I'm sure looking at their journey, you have conversations with them, you give them your opinions, feedback, things like that. I'm curious, like, what are a couple of things that you share with your little brothers as far as like, yo, this is how you got this, like, do this so that you can crush your life?
Well, they're 14 and 16.
Okay, I feel like that's a good age to like help them start crushing.
Start priming them? Should I have entrepreneurs sent to their house?
Or maybe the world about like new girlfriends, crushes, things like that. I don't know.
Well, they're so uninterested in girls, so that's not even a topic I can touch on. They're both in such different, they're first of all so different, and they're in such different stages of their life. One's in middle school, the other one's in high school. One plays sports, it's kind of like the jock.
Yeah.
who's starting to take like the ACT and SATs and AP classes.
Right.
Pretty nuts. I'm like, what's your GPA? 4.2. I'm like,
It's crazy.
he's like,
Kids
yeah,
are
I
really
even
smart
studying. I'm
nowadays.
like, cool.
I'm sure.
But I try to ask them just, it's hard, honestly, it's hard at that young of an age to start asking them those types of questions, especially.
Just, like, not aware.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I was a very unique individual in the sense of like finding a passion pretty early on.
Yeah.
Most people don't have that when they're 14, and
Yeah.
most people
Some
aren't
don't ever.
going to Fashion Board, Nordstrom, and working for BP and never want to leave.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how to best communicate that with them. They're very reserved, so it's also just kind of opening them up a little bit. But I try to just send them encouraging motivation texts, and when I see them, which unfortunately isn't as much as I want to see them, I would just tell them they're doing a good job and motivate them and try to encourage them to stay on the right track and always let me know if they need anything. But yeah, I think motivation, even if it's just a short text like you're doing an amazing job, like kick Monday in the butt or something.
Give them some like encouragement, right?
Yeah, I mean, before they know it, I'm gonna have them down here for summer vacation, packing boxes, so I can start seeing what their work ethic's like. But I give them a few more, maybe 6 months.
A couple months, yeah. It's funny. I was actually just listening to this podcast not long ago, and I can't remember who it was, but his mom, when he was in like 5th grade, told him, like, you did the best on the test, you're the smartest kid in the class, like, you're so, like, you did incredible on this test. And fast forward 20 years later, he's like this successful business person, and his mom, they were like drinking one night or something, his mom and him got into like a bicker back and forth, like obviously a friendly one, but he was like, hey, like, you can't say that, remember when I was 6 years old, you said I was the smartest person in the world, and his mom was like, I didn't say that. Or like, she's like, I didn't like mean that, like, you didn't do that good on the test, like, it was literally just a joke that she told him.
It stuck with him forever. Oh my god.
And so it's so
he
crazy.
Felt like he could conquer the world.
From something his mom, from like a lie essentially. And so I think it's so crazy when like some of these younger people are growing up, that it's like those little things that you implant, those seeds that you implant. It's like, which could just maybe that encouragement makes them a little bit more confident, and then later on in life they like try something that maybe they wouldn't have because they're a little bit more confident.
Yeah, they're impressionable.
Yeah, very. And so on the flip end, so I know your mom, she's like the mentor, right? The guru.
She's definitely inspiring, yeah.
What are like some things that your mom maybe told you as you were like figuring out things in your life? So not.
Are you sure you don't want to quit? No, I'm kidding. As I'm crying my eyes out. No.
Right. So let's go
first.
Let's go like maybe things, if you can remember, things she told you pre-12th tribe. So like as before you're like now, because now I'm sure it's like a business to business, more mentorship, but before that, like, were there any things she would tell you or help you?
She was always really encouraging in everything I did. I mean, she was so supportive in everything. She'd always brag to me about her friends and in front of me. So, I mean, I was 10 years old doing like double backflips. So she would bring her, and she was just very encouraging. Yeah, I don't think I really ever had a moment with her where she'd be like, you can't do that, or
so cool.
She's very empowering and chase your dreams and you can really do anything. I definitely have that mindset of being fearless from her. She just will go and do it. If it's not getting done, she'll go do it. If it's getting done, she'll go and try to do it better. So she's always been really, really positive. Same with my dad though. I have a very supportive family. I'm really lucky.
So cool. Yeah, truly, it's like a blessing to be able to have a family like that. I can relate. So now post 12 tribe, right? You start that. What are like some maybe golden tips of advice or something that your mom gives you to help you get through and continue like pushing yourself now?
She has a business of her own, so she's very busy as well. We both bounce ideas off each other, and it's interesting because now she comes to me for advice.
That's so cool.
I know, it's kind of crazy. I'm like, am I sitting here telling you about our digital marketing strategy to implement into your business right now? Okay.
Rad.
But still, just really encouraging. She looks at my numbers probably every day. She has access to everything in my life, essentially, which is fine. I won't take it away from her.
Yeah, that's a
But
cool relationship.
she, sometimes, it's kind of like having a diary that, like, your mom knows is there, but you don't think she's gonna look at, but she looks at it.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I'll get, like, text at 6 a.m. saying something. I'm just like, how do you know that? She's like, I'm on your back end right now. I'm like, oh my God. But she's always supportive, always trying to help me think of, like, bigger picture and just bounce different ideas off. And when there's times where, like, I have a really hard decision to make, she'll reflect back on things she's gone through and able to kind of give me advice on how it went wrong for her or how it didn't, which is really helpful. I mean, the woman will get on a flight and literally meet me across the country if I need her. It's pretty nuts. I'll tell her not to, and she's still like, nope, I'll be there. When we hit a certain goal, because she's in the back end every day, I actually hadn't checked it because it was around Black Friday, and I was just like tunnel vision, and I didn't want to get distracted whether we were close or too far. I was just like, regardless, we're going so hard that we better get there. And she knew we were gonna hit it, and she flew down, and
before you even knew.
Before I knew, she knew, and I was at my computer, and she's like, you should check your number, and I was like, why? She's like, just check it. So I refreshed it, and she like pulled out a bottle of Dom, and she was like so excited. I was her crying. I'm like, oh.
What? She's
there for every little milestone, which is just so encouraging.
That's awesome. What would you say, like, or I guess how would you say other people can get a mentor like that? Because like, you've been, like, that's such a rad situation you have, like, where your mom is literally like your business partner in a way, like, you know?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate in the sense that she has a lot of experience. However, I still kind of yearn for finding another mentor of my own, especially someone that's had industry experience, and she has a little bit, but e-commerce and just like scaling a business is very different. I've actually found I have another one now, which is takes a lot of time, and has to happen organically, and you have to find someone that you really trust and work well with. For me, like, I've connected with a lot of male entrepreneurs just because, like, that's my network. The original group of people I met here who were building businesses were males, and then from there it's like more males, and for me, I'm like, I would really love to be able to find a female who has like led a team and dealt with some of the female mindsets that we have, and like how she's been able to shift that and like work with that and build a business. So it happened, but from really someone just coming into my office telling me about her family and then being open to introducing me to them, and it's just kind of how it happens, and I feel like it has to happen at the right time. You can never just ask someone like, hey, will you be my mentor? And so it's just nurturing a relationship first and just making sure that they're the right person, but definitely don't beat yourself up too hard if you don't have one right away, because that was one thing that I felt like I was doing. Even though my mom is a mentor, I felt like I needed someone with a little bit more experience as my mentor, and someone who's not my mom, because
your mom obviously is maybe a little biased.
A little biased. But she's also is the what's it called? What's the
She's cutthroat.
When they look at it the opposite side.
Devil's advocate.
She's also the devil's advocate, like intensely. But
so
it's nice to be able to separate the relationship of having my mom and someone who's involved in my business. And we struggled with that for a little bit because it's hard to balance it. But like I was saying, just don't rush into finding a mentor. Just make sure it's the right one, and it'll come around.
And if you're grinding, eventually, like,
they come to you.
Paths
Yeah.
Exactly. So last couple questions. Are there any like quotes, I'm curious, that you like go to or live by, or kind of like, you know, moments of trials or anything, go back to anything?
I'm on a winning streak.
I'm on a winning streak. For real, that's
I'm not kidding. That's my quote right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to walk in this morning and just scream it, although I listened to it again in the car, and I was like,
yeah, that's so cool.
I'm gonna go with it.
It just makes you like appreciate life. Like now I feel like I'm on a winning streak today so much more.
Exactly.
Love it.
And there's a lot of times where things will go the opposite of how you thought they'd go. So you have to appreciate the small moments so that you're good to go the next day. Because if you let those affect you, it's just gonna weigh you down, and you gotta stay focused. So that, and kind of like how I was saying, like after rain comes flowers, after storms come rainbows.
Right.
Essentially, that's actually been a really powerful quote for me, just because I have dealt with so many ups and downs emotionally, and when things would get really, really bad, I'd have to remind myself that, like, no matter, like, it's actually impossible for things to probably get worse. They're gonna, realistically, like, when you are really, really low, how much lower are you gonna, things could happen, but like, there's gotta be one thing that's gonna bring you up a little bit. Yeah. One thing, whether it's some flowers from someone or whatever. And it's true though, every time I felt like my world was coming to an end, I was right back up on the roller coaster and climbing to the top.
It went back up.
Yeah, exactly. So after the darkest storms come the brightest rainbows.
I like that. And I'm on a winning streak. So
Get to yell it though.
I'm on a winning streak. So good. It's interesting that at one point in my life I kind of had, I'm on a winning streak better, but it was like it's like a quote or a phrase where it says like, you don't become happy from being the person that lands on the moon. You become happy from gaining happiness from seeing someone smile. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I mean, back to YPR days and all that, it was like, thriving, pushing it, being like, man, this big goal is gonna make me happy. Then getting there and being like, this is like not all it's cut out to be. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it was crazy because we like put so much time into that, and then getting there, it was like, for how happy I should have been, I wasn't. And it was crazy. I literally remember seeing this book by Joseph McClellan III called Happy. And I was like, I need to read this book because I'm just like not happy. And it's interesting. I think some people that meet me today, like, I'm allergic to negativity now. It's like one of my things. I just don't have room for it. You know what I mean? Like, just there's nothing good comes from it. But it was interesting in that moment, like flipping the perspective from feeling you need to do something so big to, let me just like get happiness in someone's smile, or like a conversation, or asking someone how their day is, or just like giving somebody a compliment. It's like when you make that shift, it's like, holy crap, like life literally just seems brighter. Yeah. So before our last question, I'm curious, for anyone that wants to follow what's going on with 12th Tribe, what's a way they can either like get in contact with you, follow you, see what's sort of going on?
So I mostly use Instagram. Most of us do.
Yeah.
So you can follow me on my personal one at Demi Marchese, which just guess how to spell it. And then the brand you can follow at Shop 12th Tribe, which maybe you just write it underneath or something. Yeah. There's lots of ways to spell all of that. But yeah, you can reach out on there and follow me there.
Very cool. Awesome. And so for the last question, this show is all about taking the advice and the talks, the conversations from the show and applying it to your life. Because someone once told me, they said, you learn through doing, not through thinking. And I think so many people get caught up in the thinking of, how am I gonna like this, how am I gonna like that? So to leave people with sort of like an action to take, what would you say people can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Kind of what I touched on before, just with reflection. Go away from your phone, away from any distraction, and just a notebook, because I think a lot of us underestimate the power of pen to paper, and like just allow your thoughts to just pour onto a piece of paper and ask yourself the questions like, what makes me happy? What am I doing now that I really like? What are things that I don't really like that I'm doing right now? What in the next thing that I do I want to keep doing, or what do I want to do at a bigger scale, or what kind of impact do I want to have on the world, on myself, on my family? When you are gone, how do you want people to perceive you, talk about you? Like, what is your legend ultimately? I mean, for me, what excites me is the thought of like what my book could be one day.
Yeah.
And like what is in those pages that hopefully will inspire for someone else, or inspire someone else. So you don't all need to write a book, but just think about the idea if you were to write a book, what's gonna be in it that like your kid one day reads that you want him to read, and like what in there was making you happy at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the good stories are never like, she went and started this company and then it was successful and then it was more successful, then it was more successful in the end.
Yeah.
It's like people want to see like this happen and then the downs and the up and the rain and the storm and the flowers and the more rain
and all of the up and the down, there's always things to appreciate about it. So like, even if you're reflecting on what you're doing right now and you hate this, this, and this about it, or you hate this, this, and this, what about that do you hate that you actually maybe like a little that could be like better if you changed it in a way or something?
Right.
Because I feel like what most people are doing, like sometimes they want to do a complete 180 shift into something else, but there's definitely things in what you're doing right now that you really enjoy doing, and you spend so much time trying to figure out what those things were, so make sure you attach those to the next thing that you're doing, because realistically that's all this whole life, dating, careers, whatever, it's all trial and error, trying to figure out what our end goal is. And no one gets it right the first time. Well, some people find someone at like 13 and end up with them forever.
Yeah.
But the reality is like trial and error, and the more trial and error you have, the quicker you have it, the faster you'll realize what you really like and what you don't like.
Yeah. It's almost like dissecting your life.
For sure.
That's cool. I like that. Cool.
Dissect away.
Dissect away. Very cool. Well, thank you for hopping on today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming by.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.